Welcome to Israel, Islam and End Times. My name is Daniel Secomb. I'm the founding director of the ministry. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you my next person to interview, and his name is Dalton Thomas. Dalton Thomas is an author as well as a filmmaker and the founder of a missionary organization called Frontier Alliance International. Now, Dalton has produced a number of different films. His first film that he produced was called Better Friends Than Mountains. The second film he did was called Sheep Among Wolves. And then he began work on a 5-part film series called Covenant and Controversy. Dalton released the first part of Covenant and Controversy called The Great Rage last year. Now Dalton is now poised to release the second installment of Covenant and Controversy, which is called The City of the Great King, which is due for release on the 1st of October in 2016. I'm interviewing Dalton from his home in Soran in northern Iraq, where he shares his thoughts on the new documentary, Covenant and Controversy, The City of the Great King. Please enjoy this interview. Dalton, it's been 14 months since our last interview. Thank you so much for coming on to Israel, Islam and End Times. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me on, bro. It's a privilege to be with you and your community there. It's a joy to be able to do this and to connect with you on here. Greetings from northern Iraq. I am in the city of Soran. Soran is about equal distance from Iran, Turkey, Mosul, Baghdad. We're kind of right in the middle of everything. It's not perfectly in the middle, but roughly out my window here, just over the mountains, is see Iran almost, and just up that way is Turkey. Mosul's about maybe an hour and a half, hour and 45 from here, and then down south, Iraq proper, Baghdad. So we're in the middle of the summer. It's quite hot here, different from your time zone and hemisphere. And I've got a house full of kids. I've got 4 boys, so it might be a little bit loud. Hopefully we can keep the noise to a minimum. But thanks for having me on, bro. It's a joy to do this.
Before we talk about the new film, I want to talk about the impact of the first film. How did you find that the first film was received?
Yeah, it's been a year, and the impact of the film has really exceeded what we thought it would be. When we sat down to make this series, we planned to do a film a year for 5 years, and to take a year per film to really give it, which actually really isn't a lot of time to do a film of this scope and of this magnitude in light of everything that's required to get it done. But still, we thought that was enough time for us to really, do each film justice. And the first film, for those of you who've seen it, if you haven't, it's free online. You can watch it for free today, Vimeo, YouTube. You can also purchase the special edition and get, tons of special features and whatnot. But it's a heavy, dark film, because what we're dealing with is basically the skeletons in our closet, the dark history of the church related to the whole issue of Israel. Our treatment of the Jewish people has been absolutely, Barry Horner says it in the film, the greatest sin of the church, hands down, throughout history, has been the issue of anti-Semitism and its treatment of the Jewish people. And that's an axiom. That's a fact. You can't deny that. That's our greatest sin as a people. And so, we weren't quite sure how it would go down, because of it's a dark film, and it's not a milk film, it's a meat film. It's the kind of thing where I think, you choke on the meat, so to speak, because there's so much content and information. It's not something that you kind of watch easily and come away from it like, oh, I feel so. I mean, it is, I think it's incredibly moving on a heart level, and there's things that we can connect with, that bring, joy and evoke worship and awe. But it's a heavy film. And so I think the thing, a year later looking back, I think the thing that's blessed me the most has been the impact of the film among people who disagree with our conclusions about Israel. I've had a lot of people from, kind of an anti-Judaic, anti-Zionistic perspective say, man, I don't really agree with your eschatology per se, but and it's hard. I can't really deny anything that you said related to our history. It's abominable. And I think that's really the first step. I felt like before, because the rest of the series is going to dive into some pretty heavy themes related to the present and the future. But I felt like before we can even address the issue of Jerusalem or the land controversy or what's coming or what now is, we really have to go back and look at and assess history and take responsibility for things I think we've notoriously tried to get out of and not, well, those weren't real Christians, or, all the funny, dumb things that we do to try to get out from under the guilt of what we have done as Christians, as the Church of Jesus through history against the Jewish people. So I think, a year later, that's the thing that's blessed me the most, has been that. I think one of the main criticisms of the film is that it's too long and it's too intense, like there's too much information. And that actually makes me really happy to hear that, because I don't want to lowball this thing. There's a lot of, books and media out there that kind of simplify and reduce the subject to something that's manageable. And I just think we can't. I think this subject demands focus and attention and humility. And we need to, worship our way through this thing. We need to see God in all his grandeur. This is not like a hobby. This isn't kind of like, let's clip the newspapers kind of a thing and get our flannel graph out. This has ethical, moral, theological, missiological, eschatological implications that I think we really need to give time to. We can't get this on the run. So the fact that we've, some of the feedback was like, I'm choking, choking on the meat of this thing. I didn't understand it, that kind of stuff. That actually blesses me, because I think, we didn't really want to shoot for the lowest common denominator. We want to kind of call the church higher, to think more rightly about God and covenant and his covenant provisions and all of that comes with that. So, I've been really blessed. A year later, we as a team, we're just so encouraged by what the Lord's done and is doing with the film and where the series is moving to.
Now, the new film is called The City of the Great King. Talk to us about the transition from the first film, which was basically about anti-Semitism, to the new film, which is centered around the city of Jerusalem.
So the first film is called The Great Rage. The second film is called The City of the Great King. And the third, fourth, and fifth films, while I can't divulge the titles of those, I can say that it has the word great in it. What we're doing over the course of the 5-film arc is very deliberately moving to an appointed end. This is, which is the thing that I really love about this series, is that, there's some projects that are like, documentary style, where you're kind of finding the film as you're shooting it or finding it as you're editing it. This series, we took a couple of years to write the story, to write the arc over a 5-year period. And so, in many ways, the first film was a cinematic exploration of hatred, both Gentile, both the powers of the air as aggression, hatred of the Jewish people as a preserved ethnic people. The second film transitions to this issue of Jerusalem and really hones in on the covenantal controversy, the hatred of this Jewish city. And so the transition is going to take place from, we're mad. And we can even see this in 1967. Excuse me, recovering from a cold, so my voice is pretty weak at the moment. But we can see the transition in Poland in 1967, because up to 67, and this is a point that we make in the first film, is that up until 67, the Polish people who hated Jews, they're very clear. We hate them because they're Jews, and here's the conspiracy theories as to why. But in 1967, when the city of Jerusalem was recaptured and when it was now being repatriated by Jewish people, the language, the jargon, the lingo changed, and it was no longer we have an issue with Jewish people. It is, there is now geopolitical events that justify our hatred, because look at their colonialism, look at their apartheid aggression, look at the way that they're dominating and attempting to subdue the Palestinians. And so the narrative changed not only in Poland but globally in 1967. And so basically, the film in many ways series is pivoting. It's changing from raising the question in an introductory way, why is there aggression towards the Jewish people, to what is at the heart of this quarrel, this controversy over the city of Jerusalem. We can see it throughout the ages. Jerusalem has always been this point of contention from the day that Abraham met the priest of Salem, and he paid an offering to him, and he tithed to this mysterious figure in Genesis. We can see it, David beheads Goliath and takes the head and puts it on a pole in front of Jerusalem. Why? He becomes king. He becomes king, and Jerusalem becomes the center of this Davidic empire. And then from those days forward, Jerusalem has always been the point of contention, of quarrel, of controversy. And so this film is going to explore that, but probably in ways that you've never heard it explored before. And I don't say that in kind of a chip on my shoulder. It's novel and a new conspiracy theory idea, but the way we're viewing it, the way that we're calling people to view it, I've not heard anyone do this before, and that's why we did it actually, is because I think this is the jugular of the whole quarrel, is that in order to understand Jerusalem, I think you really need to understand the city of Hebron. And so but a good portion of this second film deals with the city of Hebron. Hebron is where the everlasting covenant was cut with Abraham. It's where the Lord walked in between the animals cut in two. It's where David first became king. There's so many things that happened in Hebron. And it's one of the only cities that Jews never left. In AD 70 and 135, when the exile and the diaspora began, they never left Hebron. They stayed there. And so, the Arab revolts pre-state of Israel in the 1920s and the 1930s, they broke out where? In Hebron. And who called for those revolts? Haj Amin al-Husseini, the leadership in where? Jerusalem. And so the whole issue of Jerusalem, I think you can't really understand it unless you understand the quarrel, the controversy that began in the tents of Abraham in the Valley of Hebron. And so this second film, I think it's going to kind of surprise some people that we don't actually spend a lot of time in Jerusalem in this second film. We do. There's a lot of Jerusalem gets a lot of airtime, but we're wanting to raise deeper questions of yes, Jesus was crucified there. Yes, he's returning there. So that makes it significant. But why? Theologically, historically, why is this city so controversial? And, I'll share a little bit of not a spoiler, but some details with you that I'm just really excited about. Each film, we do a couple of the same things for each film. For example, in each film, we pick a geographical location that anchors that film. So film 1 was Krakow and Auschwitz and Jerusalem. Film 2 is Hebron and Jerusalem. The second thing we do in each film is we select a human story, a true story that we mysteriously tell throughout the film, and we don't tell you who it is and what the story is until the end of the film. And in many ways, I think it's worth watching the second film just for this story that you're going to see in the second film. The first film was the story of the little boy who was executed who was executed in Auschwitz on the gallows. If you haven't seen the film, I won't give you too much more. Watch it. Watch the first film if you have seen it. We're doing something similar in the second and all the other films. There's a human story that really becomes the metaphor and the frame, the narrative frame for the film. So the second film focuses on a particular human being that I think everyone in the world should know about. And it's it's powerful, and it's definitely worth your time just for that story that's being told. So the film is going to be released on October 1st in a paid limited release. And then on December 1st, it's going to become free forever for everybody. YouTube, Vimeo, you name it. It'll be free everywhere. The reason why we do that is because we want to make the films free. That's our ultimate goal. But we charge for the film, for a special edition of the film, for a number of reasons. But number one, it helps people who believe in the project. It provides a way for them to support it and to buy into it, which is very meaningful for them and for us. Secondly, it provides a context where we are freed up to give the film away. Because if you buy the film for $20, that $20 is going to go to pay the production costs of the film. It's going to go because we pay for the film out of pocket. Everybody on the team, we all pay for it. We pay for the gear, travel, accommodation, everything. We, as a team, production team, we pay for it out of our pocket so that we can have full control over it. So a studio doesn't own it. So that we can say whatever we want, however we want, and so that we can give it away for free to everybody forever. And that's our goal. So we want to, our hope is that each film that we release for that 8-week period will cover the cost of the production of that film and get us started in the next installment of the film, which hopefully this will do. We're starting production on the third film here in about 2 weeks. So we're basically immediately getting right back into the saddle to produce the third one. So if you buy the film, I encourage you to order it on DVD or to get the special edition on Amazon or Vimeo. You're going to get hours of exclusive stuff, behind the scenes stuff, aerial montage, some phenomenal aerial stuff of throughout Israel. You're going to get behind the making of, extended interviews with everybody, because we have to cut hours out from phenomenal interviews, and so it's going to be, I think, worth the $20. But it's also going to fund the ministry, fund the films being made so that we can propagate them and push them into the nations of the earth. Because I believe these film series is really going to prepare the church to be what she's called to be in the generation of the Lord's return. I believe we're at the beginning of that generation now, and I believe we're about to enter very tumultuous days. And the church, by and large, is in ignorance over it. We are in a profound pastoral and leadership crisis over the issue of Jerusalem right now. And the church needs leaders, it needs clarity, it needs substance over it and discernment over this issue of Jerusalem, because this issue is not about Jerusalem. The issue of Jerusalem is ultimately about the son of David, who will rule and reign from Jerusalem, who will judge the nations from Jerusalem, and who will make Jerusalem the center of this global empire from which he's going to restore all things. If we have an issue with that, we don't have an issue with Jerusalem. We have an issue with Jesus, who is the great king.
How different is the city of the great king compared to the first film, The Great Rage?
Yeah, the second film is very different from the first one in that the second film, it's a different theological emphasis. It's a different historical frame. But even visually, musically, it's very different. It's a beautiful film. The first one was hard to watch. I mean, most of the film was shot in gas chambers. It was filmed in a concentration camp. We've had people say it's a beautiful film. And I mean, it was, but the beauty is couched by incredible horror. It was filmed in Auschwitz. The second one, we made the decision we're only going to shoot at sunrise and sunset, because that's when I think you really see the beauty of Israel, to see the beauty of Judea and Samaria, to see it when the sun's coming up, when it's the golden city, to see it's painted, the painted skies. So the entire film was shot in beautiful colors. And so you're going to see the film probably as you've never seen it before. Everyone who's kind of screened the film before the release has said, like, man, and even people who live there, I've never seen the land like that before. It's just stunning. Musically, it's very different. We have a different score for this film than we did the first one. First one was almost all just acoustic cello. The second one has a different music. So will the third one will be very different. And we really like that. The fact that each film is very, we're intentionally making them differently in the way that camera movement, lens selection, musical composition, color palette is quite different.
You and your film crew spent a fair bit of time in and around the city of Jerusalem. What was that like?
Man, yeah, we love Jerusalem. We spent, we actually knocked the whole film out, I think, in 4 days. It was a blitz trip, so we didn't spend much time there. Most of us live in the Middle East in different places. Most of our core team's based here in Iraq, but the rest of our team flew in. We knocked it out in 3 days. We love Jerusalem. We love Hebron. We love Judea and Samaria. It's a privilege to go. It's a privilege to tell these stories and to communicate them and to show the beauty of the land and to show and just to even discuss these things that angels long to look into. It's an incredible honor.
You have a few new faces in this new film with Reggie Kelly, Stuart Greaves and Samuel Whitehead. Tell us about their contributions.
Yeah, we have some constants. We have Scott Volk, Dr. Brown, Barry, our core team. We've got some consistent guys, but we've got some new faces in this film. Each film will add a couple new faces. I just love the guys in this. Stuart Greaves, phenomenal brother. He's an amazing guy. Reggie Kelly is the deepest well on the face of the earth. Like, it's worth watching that film just to hear from Reggie. The guy is he's incredible. Samuel Whitfield, dear friend of ours. We love Samuel. That guy, he has so much clarity on these issues that I don't know of anyone who else has that kind of clarity. So it's a phenomenal lineup. We're really honored that these guys, lended their voice to this project. I think you're really going to be blessed by their contribution.
What was the most exciting thing that you experienced in the production of the new film?
I think the most exciting thing, it was just exploring the connection between Hebron and Jerusalem and putting that down for people to understand, to communicate it. Because when you touch this, so many things open up. If you get Hebron. Man, the first time I went to Hebron and I connected with what that city was and what happened there, and I won't share too much on this now, but just to say this, that in the middle of Hebron is a cave, and in that cave is a building over it. And that building, on the right side of the building, it's a Crusader-era castle. On the right side of the building is a mosque. And on the left side, or depending on which way you're looking at it, the left side is the synagogue, the right side is the mosque, depending on what side of the city you're on. And and right down the middle of the building is a corridor, and there's these tombs that point down to the cave. And buried in that cave is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like, for real, they were actually buried there. And you get the Bible and you read Genesis where Abraham and his wife and then his kids were buried there. Abraham and Isaac came back together to bury their father there. Jacob and Esau came back to bury their father there. It's incredible. Why is that incredible? Because the whole controversy, Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the controversy over the Jewish people, the controversy over Jerusalem, began there when Isaac and Ishmael were separated by election. Meaning that building, Machpelah, that cave in Hebron, is an enduring testimony to the nature of the conflict. And I think if you can understand that, you can understand the conflict. And if you don't understand that, you don't understand the conflict, no matter how well you think you do. And so I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it's powerful. It's a really powerful reality. And I'm grateful that we got to show that, and that the film really revolves around that reality of Hebron.
What are your expectations for the film, The City of the Great King?
My expectations for this film is to broaden and to deepen and to mature the church's view of the issue of Jerusalem, of Israel, of the return of the Lord, and of a biblical missiology, of a biblical eschatology, of a biblical Christology. Because a lot of people, it's all about Jesus. We love Jesus. Yeah, it is. But who is Jesus? He is the son of David. He's the king of Israel. He's the king of the Jews. He's the light of the world and the king of the nations and the desire of all nations. But he is also the king of Israel. And so my hope, my prayer for this is that this film would recalibrate, realign, would plumb line thoughts and feelings and life callings related to the Middle East, to Jerusalem, but to where you are, wherever you live, because this issue will touch us all. And I think the time for us to be ignorant and arrogant over this issue, I think those days are running out. Right now, if you have bad theology on Jerusalem, it's not that big of a deal, It doesn't affect that many people, but in the years to come, it's really going to affect a lot of people. You say, how? Well, it's like 1931. 1931, if you lived in Germany and you had bad theology on Israel, it wasn't that big of a deal. But come 1939, 1940, if you had bad theology on Israel, it meant the difference between you resisting the annihilation of the Jewish people and maybe losing your life for it, or going full bore and supporting the ambitions of the Reich. You're either going to resist or support or stand in silent indifference to it. And I hope the film pushes people into resistance, because that spirit, that whole issue of anti-Zionism, that thing is still in the zeitgeist and it's still real and still going on around us. So we need to resist it. We need to be aware of it. And I hope this film helps educate people on that.
In our interview last year, you were living in the US with your family, but you've since moved your family over to northern Iraq, of all places. Tell us how the Lord led you to do that.
My team is based here. My wife and I give leadership to Frontier Alliance International, FAI. Our core team is here. We have teams throughout the Middle East and different places. We love it. It's an amazing time to be here. We're right on the edge of the liberation of Mosul. It's gonna be a heavy season. Coming potentially 1.2 million refugees being displaced after the city's liberated. A whole bunch of new problems and dynamics. Iraq is, conflict with Iran, conflict with Turkey, conflict with Iraq, conflict with Syria, conflict with ISIS. It's just, we just love the Kurds. We love Kurdistan. It's just a privilege, an absolute privilege to be here right now doing this in this place. It's phenomenal that we get to be here for this. It's a really, it's a privilege.
You've recently had unprecedented access to be embedded with the Peshmerga in their efforts in fighting Islamic State. Tell us how all that came about.
Yeah, we have. We've been spending a lot of time with Peshmerga. We live in pretty much, my whole neighborhood's Peshmerga. Our city is like the largest draw of Peshmerga soldiers. And so, we've asked this question of the Lord, how do we love our neighbor here? Our neighbor is a Peshmerga soldier. And these guys are serving on the front lines. They're like the only guys who are on the front lines serving in a combat capacity to restrain the Islamic State, to push them back. And, the Iraqis are doing it and the coalition is, doing stuff. But the Kurds, man, they're in there and they're losing their lives daily. So we are building a long-term, wide-scale infrastructure for medical and relief ministry to serve Peshmerga. So, if you're watching this and you're a doctor or a dentist or you've got combat experience with medical experience, man, get in contact with us. Go to our website, faimission.org. We could use your help. Come over, serve. It's amazing. We were the other day at a field hospital just outside Mosul, and it's tragic. 10,000 soldiers, 10,000 Peshmerga, and basically one field hospital. They don't have the resources that they need. Guys are dying because they don't have what they need. And so we're doing what little we can, but we got pretty amazing access from the commanders to really get amongst it and serve and be a blessing to these guys. So it's a real privilege.
Tell us about the incredible opportunities and how believers can get involved to help the people in northern Iraq.
Yeah, man, thank you for asking. Thank you for asking how you get involved. If you want to get involved, man, I know this sounds, I hate saying this, but we need resources. We need money, because this is a massive. We're just drowning in an ocean of human misery right now in need. And Jesus is sufficient. The poor we will have with us always. But we want to give a faithful witness to these people in the midst of their suffering and their misery. But that requires that we actually meet them where they're at and serve them, which means we need doctors, we need medics, we need people who are skilled who can come. So number one, come. If you're able to come, get in contact with us and come. If you cut hair, you can come and cut refugees' hair, just touch their heads. It's incredible ways that we can, there's so many different ways we can serve. Teaching, if you're a teacher, there's just so many things. If you're willing and able to come. Pray for us, please pray for our teams who are serving, and give. If you have resources, if the Lord has blessed you with resources, our teams can put them to immediate use today, not tomorrow, not the next day. Today we can put them to use. And so we're trying to enlarge our infrastructure right now. We need resources, we need vehicles, we need accommodation we basically want to get more salt and more light on the ground here, and that requires resources. And right now we don't have what we need. So yeah, come, number one. Number two, pray for us. Number three, give. FAImission.org is our website, and you can find all the information on there about how you can come, how you can pray for us, and how you can give. Share our videos, watch our films, and share them. They're free online, all of our films. We've made multiple documentaries. We're in the process of making more. And we need help to promulgate the message, to push them out there in the nation. So help us share the films. and be an advocate. Start pushing this stuff. The West, the church needs to get involved. We can't just send our money either. We need to go. We need to send our bodies. We need to go ourselves. But we also need to put our money where our mouth is and stop wasting our money and resources on dumb things that don't account for eternity. So throw in for that, and we'll put it to good use. I promise you. Some of these aid organizations, who knows where your money is going? If you give through FAI, it's going to go to the front lines, and it's going to go to people who have zeal for the gospel and who are serving on the ground today.
Dalton, thank you so much for coming on to be interviewed with Israel, Islam and End Times. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'm looking very much forward to be interviewing you again for Covenant and Controversy Part 3 next year. God bless you, and we'll be praying for you.
Daniel, thank you, bro. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I'm so stoked that we get to put our hand to the plow together, and that you're going to be involved in future film projects with us and us with you. And it's an incredible honor. So thank you, everybody else, for taking the time to listen to this. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
Israeli-Palestinian situation, as well as what is happening in Syria and, of course, Iran.
The next, and in the last few minutes, in fact, there's an air raid siren now. We're just going to take
between Israelis and Palestinians is raising renewed fears that the Holy Land is moving towards a
violence in Israel and the occupied territories has increased with new Palestinian stabbing.
These are some complicated times.
We've been negotiating with them for 65 years. We say get out or you're dead.
Israel's not going anywhere. The question is, what does its future hold?
Very difficult undertaking for Israel to target those who are targeting them.
The perfect Christ
come, oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel.